So moved. Item 4 is Legendary Creek Sanitary Sewer Project Change Order 1. This is comes from J. Miller Construction Incorporated in the amount of $11,750 to elevate the lift station and related components for the Legendary Creek Sanitary Sewer Improvement Project, a CDBG funded project in partnership with Pace Water System. Comments or questions on this change order? I'm sure it's a big improvement to that. Again, it's CDGB funded. Seeing no comments or questions from board members or staff, I'll move that to the Thursday consent agenda without objection. Seeing none, so moved. Next item on today's agenda is the Butterfly House. This is a discussion of approval of location for Butterfly House in Santa Rosa County. I'm going to turn this over to the county administrator.
Thank you, sir. I brought this item to the board today for an update, for your review, and potentially for your decision. This is an issue that's been on the books for a year with the approval of the Navarre Park Master Plan just a little over a year ago. The board directed me to look at the Butterfly House and Vivarium, the costs associated with that project, and because of the significant capital investment the county was going to make in that facility, that I meet with representatives from the Butterfly House and talk about operations, maintenance, sustainment of that facility, and utilization of that facility beyond the current 51 days that the Butterfly House is open. I'm bringing this to the board now because we are approaching 100% design completion for Navarre Park. The consultants should be done and deliver those plans to us by the end of the year. What we have done, as outlined in the memo, is we've put any architectural work or design of structures on hold pending the framework or outline of an MOA or and answers to the questions that the board asked me to look at, which is that operations, maintenance, sustainment piece for this facility and also expanding its use beyond the current 51 days. I've had a series of meetings, 7 in total by my count, with the various stakeholders. We met as early as February with representatives from the Panhandle Butterfly House. I started to gather documents, financial statements, profit loss statements, financial policies, memorandums of agreement, incorporation documents, and at one of those first meetings with Mr. Smith and Ms. Salinas, it was the first time I was aware of that the Butterfly House is a program essentially, and it's under a parent 501c3 under Keep Santa Rosa Beautiful. And there is an existing memorandum of agreement between Keep Santa Rosa Beautiful and the University of Florida IFAS through our county extension to provide that programming. So there is no Butterfly House legal entity, I guess, is the outcome. But that doesn't matter. We would deal with Keep Santa Rosa Beautiful as the legal entity. So we continued those discussions. The board revisited this issue in May at Commissioner Parker's request. And following that meeting, the possibility for co-locating and developing some synergy with the Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge became an option. So I held additional meetings that included Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge in that discussion. My plan was to bring a solution to the board. That did not happen, where everybody agreed to a solution. That I thought we were there towards the end of last month. The Panhandle Butterfly Board met and decided that co-location was not in their interest. So I just wanted to provide you an update. The business plan that was submitted by the Panhandle Butterfly House to me on October 25th that lays out their plan as to how they would scale from current operations of 51 days a year to approximately 250 days a year, 50 weeks, 5 days a week, how they would grow their revenue stream to allow them to hire staff and to then operate and maintain and sustain the facility that's laid out in the program. There are some potential revisions to that facility. The facility that's in the program that's approved is 1,500 square feet for a learning center with 1,800 square feet of porch outside that facility, and then a 2,500 square foot vivarium and field house. The Butterfly House president and representatives presented me what they think is required is not that. They've requested 2,000 square foot learning center and 2,200 square feet for a vivarium. That includes 400 square feet of greenhouse space for the plants and things necessary to support the vivarium. Essentially, those costs are the same as what's in the current program, about $1 million for the Butterfly House and Vivarium in Navarre Park. The business plan is included in the backup. It's my assessment. Well, before I go on to that, there's a second option since the discussion to co-locate did not work out. The Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge has come forward and proposed that they would establish a vivarium at their location, that they would share a learning center, and that the costs are still being refined, I think, for that project. In the memo I cited just over $500,000. It will be around that number, so there would be a savings of about $500,000, and that is where my recommendation and staff recommendation comes from, is based upon the cost savings, the stewardship of the taxpayer dollars, and the fact that you asked me to look into that operations, maintenance, and sustainment piece, and I think that is the recommendation, but I leave that to the board discussion at this point.
All right, Dan, thank you very much. It was I appreciate all the effort and everything that's gone into this. Commissioner Parker, did you have?
Yes, sir. Just, I forgot how Dan says it, but I think he says a point of factual clarification or something like that when we get off stream, is when I brought this back to the board, it was as the board representative for the current year for the TDC. That was actually a recommendation by the previous board member, Jack Sanborn, that he then put forwarded, and the TDC at that time voted unanimously to ask the county commission to send back to them to review, and that was why I brought it forward. It wasn't a Sam Parker initiated, it was actually the unanimous vote of the TDC.
Yes, sir.
All right, so no votes. This is just an information item. Do we need to go over this again Thursday?
Well, I think the pressing issue is a matter of timing. We are going to complete the deliverable with Genesis for the design of Navarre Park. There is a task in there for the architectural work for Panhandle Butterfly House and Vivarium, so that deliverable will be complete at the end of the year, so there's sort of a need to either, we have to keep that contract open or make a decision before then, so I think that's the primary pressing issue, is the fact that construction plans are being complete. We want to close out that task with Genesis, and we need to know whether we're going ahead with architectural plans for a facility in Navarre Park or some other direction.
All right. I know there's a lot of folks here from Butterfly House. We're going to allow you a few minutes. Do you have a specific speaker that wants to speak on this? And we're gonna listen to them, and then if there's another presentation, we'll listen to that. So you have the floor.
Good morning. I'm the lucky one that they wanted to come up here and speak. My name is Kevin Smith. I'm the executive director of Keep Santa Rosa Beautiful. The Panhandle Butterfly House is and has been a program of our organization since the beginning in 1997. When, from what I understand, there was a mobile home in the park. That was the home of the chamber, and that was it. They had a parking lot. And the Butterfly House was started by Jack Weatherall, came in front of the commission, and they agreed to let them go and build the Butterfly House. Where we are right now, whenever I was introduced to Mr. Robbins, I thought it would be a fantastic idea to move the Butterfly House to the Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge and have that synergy. Yes, we were moving out of a prime location, and we were moving to another person's property, but I thought it would be a good idea. And we didn't have discussions at that time because the Panhandle Butterfly House was told, y'all can't go to the Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge. So we started having these conversations again.
I didn't follow you on that. You was told what?
The people of the Panhandle Butterfly House they were under the impression that if they didn't stay in the Navarre Park, that they were not going to get funding for a butterfly house at all.
How did you get that impression?
Can somebody help me out with that? How did we get that impression?
Because I don't recall the board discussing.
The board approved the Navarre Park master plan.
You need to come up to the podium.
Yes, this was not on record, sir. This was not
Okay,
done
all right.
on record.
Thank
I
you.
think I would add, my recollection, on record, when the board considered this, the Navarre Park Master Plan last October, there was no board vote, but I think unanimously, the commissioners supported the Panhandle Butterfly House.
Yes, sir.
In any location. That comment was
that-
made by several specifically.
Actually, Mr. Parker and Mr. Cole both said that on record, that they support the butterfly house wherever it may be, if I recall that correctly. I can go back and look at the recordings. But anyway, getting back to where we are at this moment. We have had several meetings with the Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge. I think it's a great organization. I think they're going to do well. I'm thrilled that they're in Santa Rosa County now, or will be soon. The problems and when we started having these discussions, it was kept between Mr. Shebler, myself, Ms. Salinas, and the Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge, Mr. Robbins, Mr. Anderson, and that was it. The Emerald Coast Wildlife did not tell their board about it, and we did not tell our board about it. I did discuss it with my chairman, Mr. Nicky Walker, because he likes to be informed on things that I am doing, and we started having discussions. When we presented it to our board, we had further meetings with Mr. Robbins, with the whole board of the Panhandle Butterfly House. The issues that the Panhandle Butterfly House are having are a few of them. One of them is the parking issue. There's not enough room for parking, in our opinion. It would cause problems for people getting in and out of there. Have a problem with the ADA recommendations. There's not paved roads or paved walkways. The footprint for the vivarium and a exhibition room would be much smaller than the footprint that we have now in Navarre Park. Right now we have, with everything total, we have more than 2,600 square feet between the small entrance to the vivarium, we have a greenhouse, we have storage. That's not including all the gardens there. We would be put into a small area on that piece of property where we don't feel like we would be able to have the gardens that we want. The gardens in the Navarre Park right now, I would argue with anybody, are the most beautiful gardens in Santa Rosa County right now. These gardens are maintained 365 days a year almost. They have to stay maintained. We have people that spending the most important days of their lives, prom, weddings, they go there to take their photographs because of those gardens. These people have been working on these gardens for 21 years. They're beautiful. And plenty, with no charge. People go and enjoy them gardens all the time. We don't feel like we'd be able to have them gardens. We don't feel like we would be able to have the sunlight into the vivarium and on the greenhouse into the gardens to be able to grow the plants that they need for the butterfly house to be prosperous. With the first meeting I went to with the butterfly house, they were talking about butterfly food, and I'm sitting here thinking, butterfly food? Well, it's plants. It's for the caterpillars. It's not actually for the butterflies. The flowers are for the butterflies. So we have several issues why they do not want to relocate at the Emerald Coast Wildlife Center. If there was more room, if there were more parking, if there was under certain other situations, that would be fine. The Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge, they want to hire somebody to help support the vivarium and the butterfly house itself, we don't need any more support. We have the people to run the butterfly house. The butterfly house is not ran by dollars or buildings. It's ran by people. And the people that run the butterfly house, they're not a bunch of little old ladies that like butterflies. They're highly educated professionals. We have ex-military. We have several retired school teachers, educators. We have nurses, doctors. We have highly educated professionals that run the butterfly house. I do not have a vote on that board. I'm an advisor. Miss Salinas does not have a vote on that board. She's an advisor as well. We let the volunteers that put in their hard work, their hard time, make the decisions of the butterfly house. And these people are very important. Without them, the butterfly house would not exist. We do have enough money in the bank right now that we are going to hire, or we have hired already, a director that's going to be over day-to-day operations. We do think that we can not only maintain, but thrive with a new building in the Navarre Park. We've been operating with the facilities that we have now that was all built and paid for by volunteers and contributors to Santa Rosa County. They spend time just maintaining these old structures. One of the first things I had to do at the butterfly house was climb up there and fix the roof. That's what made them like me a little bit more. I have all the confidence in the world of the people that run the Panhandle Butterfly House. The price tag for the butterfly house is very large. When we sat down with the engineers over a year ago, they told us, go big. The most they could do is tell you no, and then we could scale it down. So we went big. And these fine gentlemen that I'm talking to right now approved it. And we were like, really? We're getting a really, really nice facility. Well, it's a little bit more than what we need. We don't need that big of a facility. We don't need all the walkways and the patios. We don't need as big of a footprint as they put there. So we figured, well, we'd try to scale it down. Well, apparently scaling down doesn't save any money. I don't understand that. But that's where we're at right now. It's nothing against the Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge. I think they're going to be great. We just don't feel like it's a right fit for the Panhandle Butterfly House to be with them. This is like a marriage between two people. We're moving in together. We're going to be living together. And as y'all well know, with a marriage, both people better be fully in on it. If you force it, then the marriage is not going to be happy. And right now, the Panhandle Butterfly House Board of Directors does not feel like it's in their best interest to relocate down the road to the Wildlife Refuge.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Questions?
can I ask questions of
Kevin.
Mr. Smith? Hey,
Kevin.
Kevin.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks-
Yes, sir.
Thanks for taking this on to serve as the spokesperson from the group. So, wanting to be respectful of the board and their preference to stay in the park, that brings us back to when this was approved for the first time in October. The board was very clear that they were looking for two things, and that this money for a new butterfly house and support structures was an opportunity, but it came with conditions or requirements. And they haven't really changed since day one. And one was that you could, as an organization, show that you could be sustainable. You would have the fiscal strength. You could demonstrate the fiscal strength to go from a 5-month operation to a 12-month operation. It was clearly communicated that this, nobody was going to be in support of investing in a facility of that size or scope for 5 months. So it was got to be open for a year. Everybody understood that. And then the next piece was a defensible business plan that would demonstrate that you would be able to satisfy expenses that had never been paid before by the Butterfly House. If it be utilities, obviously there's no rent, anything that would go to support a year-long operation staff and what have you. So we got the business plan last month. I believe that's close to 9 months since the original request or meeting that you had with the county administrator. And in looking at the business plan, I was excited to dig through it. I've read through the whole thing, and some of the information I'm familiar with that I've seen before, but I don't know that it provides that defensible business plan that answers those original 2 questions. Whether you partner with somebody else or stay in the park or not, you know, any investment that's going to go to build a new facility, wherever it would go, still going to have to demonstrate fiscal sustainability. So where do you think you are in the way of the business plan? Do you believe that the business plan as presented and put in the backup clearly demonstrates that you could be a 12 months out of the year sustainable operation?
We might have to have some more supporting evidence, like comparing the tourism dollars to other facilities and how the tourism goes through these other facilities. We've never charged an entrance fee, and that's one of the things that are on there. We maintain approximately 15,000 people a year. Now, if we start charging, yes, we're going to lose some of those folks. But with a brand new facility, we're probably going to gain some more folks too. So, you know, I don't have no way to really prove that to you because we don't know exactly what holds the future. But as y'all know, the tourism in Navarre and in Santa Rosa County is picking up. I don't think those numbers are going to dwindle unless our economy collapses. Hopefully that won't happen no time soon. But we might have to have some further documentation to prove our numbers. And you're correct by asking that question.
I mean, just the simple math of the thing, if you kept the 15,000, and the numbers have been pretty static, somewhere between 12 and 15,000 a year for attendance, but if you retained all of that market share and 15,000 times the $7 per person that you're proposing in the business plan, that's 105,000. And the lowest estimate for revenue, I think, was around 207,000 annually. So could you maybe help me make up that gap with, I read that there was fee-based workshops that have been created and that some of those were offered last year. What kind of money did they generate?
Yeah, Pam Murphy could probably answer those questions for you better than I can, or either our treasurer. She's the one that has the money coming in and going out. They do have different programs that they do raise revenue. They butterfly release. They did a couple of butterfly releases this year, and they didn't know how it was going to go. It was a brand new. They sold out both times. People apparently don't mind paying $10 to release a butterfly. I guess it's worth $10 to them. And we also have a market where we sell T-shirts and hats and mugs, and that has done very well this year. I don't know the numbers of how much they taken in. Our treasurer could probably answer that question for you too. But we have other sources of revenue besides just an entry fee into the Butterfly House.
Well, I appreciate that. And for me, I can't speak for the other members of the board, but for me, the business plan as presented, there is some definite supplemental information that would need to be provided before I think that the comfort level would be there to show that it's a sustainable operation. And I don't know that we'll get there today. I know the chairman would like to afford the opportunity to hear from other folks, as would I, but I'll reserve my motion for after public comment.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have another presentation.
Greetings. My name is Jan Chappell. I live at 2087 Avenida del Sol in Navarre, Florida. For the last year, I've been the treasurer of the Panhandle Butterfly House, a 501c3 nonprofit under Keep Santa Rosa Beautiful. I graduated from Syracuse University with a degree in accounting. I have served as an accountant for multiple companies, and I am a retired chief financial officer for a multinational nonprofit company. Currently, I own a manufacturing company in Santa Rosa County. I have reviewed the last 6 years of financial statements for the Panhandle Butterfly House. The Panhandle Butterfly House does not receive funding from the county, the state, or the federal government. Our income is generated through contributions, grants, tours, plant sales, butterfly releases, programs, weddings, and our gift shop. This organization has consistently maintained adequate capital needed to provide maintenance, planned improvements, and emergency funds. Our current structure was built and paid for by volunteer efforts and contributions. The Board of Commissioners reaffirmed their commitment to replace the existing butterfly house in May of 2018. We hope that the county commissioners will live up to this promise and replace the butterfly house and vivarium in the same location when they demolish our current building. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner.
Yes.
do you have the figures for your total revenues for 2017 and then 2018 year-to-date?
If I have them over here, if you'd like to give me a second.
$49,129 in 2017, and
We aren't finished with 2018 right now. It's
2018 through September, 48,313.
Yes. And that's without charging for anybody to go through our butterfly house. Okay.
Thank you.
There was TDC grant funding support in those years. We typically haven't asked for the purchase of butterflies, I think, and don't they come with a grant request?
We did
From,
not receive that this year.
Ma'am, in the mic, please.
We did not receive that this year in 2018.
In years past?
There
I
have
know we
been
had some
years.
requests that had come up in previous years.
In previous years, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Pete, do you have something different to add?
Yeah, Pete Petersane, 2861 PGA Boulevard. I wanted to make just a couple of comments. Obviously, for some people, this is an emotional issue, and I'm going to point out that, as was stated, the current butterfly house, totally built with, constructed with donations, maintained with donations, and operated with donations. People have given their time, their talent, and their treasure to this for 21 years, and it's been successful. Never lost money. We were closed a couple of years to rebuild after the hurricanes. And I kind of added all that up, and it's somewhere in the area of $2 to $2.5 million worth of time, talent, and treasure to have run that for the citizens of Santa Rosa County and our visitors. So when a $2.5 million investment is being deconstructed for the greater good, the people feel a great loss and certainly would like to have it replaced. Now, as to my other main point of having it replaced, as he said, the initial design was 2 separate buildings, lots of embellishments and whatnot, and it came in at $950,000. And we said, well, let's downsize it. Well, we just last week got a copy of an architect conceptual rendering. Well, it's the same as the original one, and they just kept the square footage. It's still got 2 separate buildings, wraparound porch, embellishments, and I question the build price for what we actually need. I don't think it's that much. I look at people that are building 2,000 square foot homes on the Sound with a screen enclosure for their big pool, and I'm pretty sure it's coming in building costs well below $950,000.
Okay. All right.
So I did make one quick call to a screened enclosure, screened room contractor, and for a 220 square foot screen enclosure for the aluminum, 150 mile an hour wind rated, he quoted me for that part of it $20,000. It would need a stem wall and footing around it and some other stuff, but I would think just the vivarium portion's got to be much closer to $100,000 than $350,000. And putting these two buildings together, eliminating wraparound porches, I think the current estimated price is way high.
Thank you.
Questions or thank you?
You base that on speaking with just making some phone calls over the phone?
Well,
'Cause
I
we've got a professional that we hired that does this all over the southeastern United States,
Okay.
and that's their estimate for the
Yeah.
proposed cost. So I would tend to lean toward what they're saying, and
Okay.
I don't know what embellishments you're speaking of, but the original design, it's important to remember that this is something that has been done in concert with folks from the Panhandle Butterfly House, and they've had feedback and been able to be integrally involved in the process. They've been involved in the process throughout. And
May I ask my group here, anybody from the Butterfly House, once that first initial design that was put in the Genesis program a year ago, that was presented last September, I believe, a year ago? September
I've been
17th.
meeting with your wife and with Mary and Kevin. I think the first meeting we had was in May of 2015. And I know that members of the Butterfly House met with the architect from Genesis to help bring back the first design of the building. We since reduced the size of the building, but basically at some point to deliver, as we can see what they've requested in the way of needs to operate a year-long operation, they're going to be in that 4,400 square feet under roof. So, I mean, we are where we are. What you say could be true. Some of the estimated costs may be on the high end, but as far as the program size requirement, that is not coming from Santa Rosa County being pushed to Panhandle Butterfly House. We have the Butterfly House telling us that right now they need roughly 4,400, 4,500 square feet
Right, and that-
footprint. That's almost identical to what is proposed in the site now.
I got out my drafting ruler, took drafting and stuff like that, and based on the scale in the Genesis program, they got a little scale there. They didn't have square footage or dimensions, but I measured out their design. The whole complex approached 10,000 square feet under roof in the original Genesis design.
The one that's currently programmed now, we have the footprint,
it's
the
the-
square footage of every line item
Yeah.
and the cost.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
understanding that including a covered area that is the wraparound porch, if you will, the costs are a little bit less per square foot for that than they would be for enclosed portion, but where are we square footage? from that?
The current program, which is why I emailed that to
Right.
Mr. Peter Zane and the president and the board members I met with on October 25th, is 1,500 square feet enclosed learning center with an 1,800 square foot wraparound deck. The enclosed space construction estimate is $300 per square foot based upon the design professionals we've hired. The porch is $50 a square foot construction estimate. That program includes 2,000 square feet vivarium at a height of 25 feet, I think. The estimate is $150 a square foot to build that structure with a polycarbonate roof on top. and then the field house is 500 square feet. So that's 5,800 square feet is what's in the current program.
Commercial application versus a residential application would probably be some of the differences. I didn't want to get too knee-deep in the weeds here, but it was, got to be careful with how the public might be receiving some of the information that's been put out today and some of the information that's been put out over social media over the course of the last week. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name's Jenny Weber, 9900 Norman Riley Road in Holt. And I'm not going to speak for myself today. I'm going to speak for Louise Biernesser, who's sitting over there and unable to today. So, and I will edit for you. So thank you. So let's take a brief step back to enlighten those who are not aware and clarify some untruths. The PBH is only open 4 months a year, partially true as our tours and time open to the public has been May through August with a 1 to 2 day reopening for Monarch Madness. The facilities are addressed year-round. We do outreach and programs throughout the year, and unless it is our couple cold months, our gardeners are there too. As an FYI, we plan to be open year-round in the future, so that 15,000 tourists will probably be a lot more, and so we'll probably end up with a lot more revenue from those people too. We won't have butterflies when they can't live outside, but we will offer programs and activities. In the past 4 years, we have done 90 outreach programs: Niceville, Milton, Fort Walton Beach, Pensacola, Pace, Gulf Breeze, and of course, Navarre. We set up this year to take credit cards, and both our sales and our donations have increased tremendously. We have never been in the red. We've always made a profit. In 2017, we did our first paid program. As we have always been limited by space, we had 23 participants crammed in our outdoor classroom, the gazebo, and we turned away at least 5 people as we simply did not have the room. In 2018, we had 16 paid event programs, again turning away folks because of space limitations. These programs brought in $1,420 in revenue. For the Growing Butterflies program, we turned at least 8 people down at $35 apiece. Participants included folks from Bay County, Panama City, Walton County, Freeport, Defuniak Springs, 2 from Alabama, and 1 from Mississippi. I must state that our programs provide research-based information and are supported by UF and IFAS Extension. I'm going to skip all of that. You're welcome. It was suggested that we meet with Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge, which we did. We did several times. We made it clear that we needed our own learning center where we do continuous year-round activities, programs, and tours. The PBH board gave a unanimous vote of no to this so-called joint venture. Why? Multiple reasons. Parking. 18 places will not accommodate the number of visitors, 100 to 500 daily during peak tourist season. No bus parking or turnaround. Events. Site and lack of parking cannot accommodate 1,000+ visitors. Our spring opening, pollination celebration, and Monarch Madness could not take place. Safety. The wildlife area. Possible rabies vectors, diseases, snakes, and crossing a 4-lane highway. Mitch tried to alleviate our concerns, stating there are 2 off-site parking areas that we could use. Billary Church, which is 3/10 of a mile away. People are not going to walk in that in the summer. And Donna's Antiques is across the highway. There is no pedestrian designated walkway and no formal agreement. No traffic assessment has been made. Limited programs due to the lack of parking and maybe the lack of a classroom. The space given would downsize the PBH to half of what it is today. It also appeared to our board that although it was stated that we can negotiate and work as a team better together, that was not the case. Here I'll just mention a few. So there's a big talk about the budget and the things, and we're going to skip all of that. Sorry, Louise. So why is this being brought about again? It was voted on and unanimously approved at the October 17th Board of Commissioners meeting. It was placed back on the agenda to revisit, and the BOCC dropped it again, thus approving the PBH being rebuilt in Navarre Park again. Now this, I urge you to honor your vote and leave the Panhandle Butterfly House in Navarre Park. If this is no longer possible, give us an architect and the money promised by your vote during the October 2017 meeting. Give us another option and work with us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have a,
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner, I'm sorry.
I'll maybe be able to bring this in for a landing, because it seems like we definitely have a disconnect between the vote that was taken in October and the involvement with the wildlife refuge and what needed to be accomplished for that money to be allocated. There was, in my mind, no promise of money unilaterally without being able to meet the requirements that came with it. And those requirements were, as Mr. Smith has acknowledged, were very clearly set forth. I remember after the motion was approved, stating that a memorandum of understanding would have to be agreed upon, and that those conditions were that this would be operate for 12 months, and that you could prove that you could go from an operation that was an all-volunteer operation that operated 4 to 5 months a year to an operation that would be year-round and be sustainable. So whether there's a partnership with somebody else or whether or not you were to stay there, to have those taxpayer dollars invested into the Panhandle Butterfly House to build a new facility in the park or anywhere else, you'd still have to demonstrate the same fiscal strength, the ability that you could run a annual, all year long sustainable program. And right now with the business plan that I've seen, I think that threshold hasn't been met yet. I know that I don't have confidence that we can go from 49,000 to 207,000. And the business plan provides for 7 to 8 months of operation and could have 12 months of operation. But the business plan doesn't clearly provide where the programs would, what the programs would be, how much revenue they would generate. And so to me, that was the opportunity there. The other thing is, this didn't just happen. I remember that vote that y'all have referenced a couple times in May where this item was looked to be revisited. And as soon as the vote was over, many of y'all were very elated and walked out. Then now's the time to bring those programs forward to prove to the citizens of Santa Rosa County and this board that you deserve this extraordinary investment of $1 million, really $1.2 million. I said, this is the opportunity. Develop the business plan, develop the annual year-long program, show how it would work. And from then, it took until October to provide the business plan. And the business plan we got is not one that I feel would help me satisfy the fiduciary responsibility that I have. So if it's a smaller facility that y'all want to do, then that can certainly be looked at. But two other quick things. One, the Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge did not initially approach the Panhandle Butterfly House. It was the Panhandle Butterfly House that initially approached them. I want to make sure folks understand that before the last vote was taken, that's my understanding, that there was a meeting that was set up maybe through a third party to have a tour out there, and that's how that came about. It wasn't one coming to the other.
Yeah, the Butterfly House did not approach the Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge with this. I was introduced to Mr. Robbins. There was no one organization went to the other organization to ask him or propose, let's do this. This was a mutual meeting between the two of us.
Fair enough.
When this took place.
Fair enough, through a third party. My point
Right.
is that it wasn't the Wildlife Refuge proactively seeking out the Panhandle Butterfly House, or I guess vice versa.
That's correct.
But at the end of the day, I don't think it's something that the Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge, and they can speak for themselves, was actively pursuing. They were working their own plan, and have actually been quite gracious in delaying their plan and looking for a way to find shared needs and interests to where it could work out with everybody.
They're continuing with their plan. They made it clear to us. We're going forward regardless of what happens. They're in the process of putting together their facilities right now. I don't think they were delaying because of the PBH. And there might not be a guarantee. Nobody knows the future. We've laid out a business plan, and it took some doing to do this. We're going from a facility that was operating on a shoestring to begin with, to building up the revenue that we have now. They have a pretty good little chunk of change in the bank right now, considering that they do four months out the year where they bring in revenue, and that's not charging an entrance fee to the PBH. I would say that's pretty good. And I think that $207,000 number, I think that's high end that we're looking at.
That was actually on the lower end of the three different options you provided.
That was the lower end?
Yes, sir.
And those numbers might not be exactly right, but for $207,000 a year, that's way more than it would take to operate that facility.
Right,
We've
that was
only got
total.
one paid employee,
Right.
and she doesn't make a whole lot of money.
That was total revenue, was that it was, the business plan put forth that it'd be around 200,000 that would be brought in, and only one staff member was put in there in the budget, 50,000 plus 25. Look, I just wanted to say that I think that it's a good, maybe a little bit more than a first draft of a business plan. I know that I've got specific questions that I relayed to the county administrator that would help me have a greater comfort level. I don't know where the comfort level is of the other members of the staff and the board. The only reason I'm addressing this now is because this is in my district and because this initially came through with significant advocacy by myself and a lot of work and time and effort to be put in. I would like to say, Mr. Chairman, that, and to my fellow board members, to remain consistent with the funding that was granted. In my understanding of the spirit of the approval of that funding was that we needed to have certain assurances on sustainability and year-long operation, that maybe instead of it being a no, we could keep from delaying the phase one of the Navarre Park plan, and we could maintain a footprint placehold where it currently exists. There is a footprint that is currently as a part of the phase one plan, and we don't have to know the exact drawing dimensions for a proposed building that would go in that location to move forward with all of the other things that are part of phase one, and direct the county administrator to continue working with the Butterfly House and possible partners to develop a memorandum of agreement between either Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge or the Panhandle Butterfly House to deliver a butterfly house in one of those two locations as we previously approved. But in my mind, the decision today is if we do nothing with the Panhandle Butterfly House and we don't have finality in that, it could delay improvements and the start of the phase one construction for the Navarre Park that impact residents, tourists, water quality, stormwater drainage improvements. There's any number of improvements that are part of that phase one that shouldn't be delayed because we haven't got over these final hurdles with the Butterfly House. How does that seem as a possible way forward to where we could extract out the 1.2 million from the plan, keep a placehold of the footprint of the Butterfly House, but move forward with the other things? That would provide everybody a little bit more time. Does that seem like a reasonable request?
Mr. County Administrator, does that give you a direction to move forward in?
That's the will of the board, I can certainly carry out that direction. We'll talk to Genesis about holding open this element of the contract, as long as they deliver the 100% construction plans for the park, so that we can bid that right after the first of the year and begin construction.
We'd have 100% construction plans for the park with a
With a space,
designated
yes, sir.
area set aside, and that area could be smaller if they come back with a programming that would be smaller, or ultimately if it goes to partner with another group, those savings could be realized, but that would work.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, the PBH they've made it clear to me that they are not interested in going to the wildlife refuge.
I think we.
Now, if
we're
they
all-
did build a butterfly house at the wildlife refuge, y'all would be giving the money to another organization that's never ran a butterfly house. Again, dollars and buildings do not run the butterfly house. It's people. And those people are very important. What we need, if y'all need additional information, is to know exactly what you need for this business
And
plan.
that's, I think the outline that Commissioner Williamson put forward is one that'll allow you the time to do that. So I'm willing to support that. I'm going to stay on record, just like, I'm not going to speak for Commissioner Parker. He's pretty good at that himself. But I am going to speak for myself, and I think Sam will support me on this. I'm committed, just like I was then, to put some dollars into the butterfly house. And that, you still have that commitment. But as has been expressed by Commissioner Williamson, we got a fiduciary responsibility to do what's best. And I kind of compare this to when we moved the courthouse out to Avalon Boulevard. I mean, there was a lot of people that are emotionally attached to keeping the courthouse downtown where it was. But what do we do that's best for future generations? What do we do that's best investment for the future of Santa Rosa County and the citizens of Santa Rosa County that we are, and that we represent? So I would support that suggestion. I hope you feel like you can support that suggestion. I'm getting a nod out there, so.
Yes.
Commissioner Williamson, you want to make that as a motion at this time for Thursday, move it forward to Thursday? How do we want to do it?
Just move that we direct staff to engage with Genesis to finalize the construction plans without the butterfly house final renderings as a part of that. And then furthermore, that the board members, after looking at the business plan as presented, if you have any specifics that you would like to see them answer. I know for me, there's quite a few things that I think would provide a much greater level of clarity when you start talking about the 12-month operations. You put several examples of other facilities, butterfly houses. The first one was open 365. I didn't see where any of the other facilities that were put down as an example were open year-round. The programs that you talk about that you want to bring forward, the fee-based programs, how much revenue do you anticipate them generating? What are the names of these programs? What does a kind of a snapshot of the curriculum look like? To basically provide, this is the robust curriculum that we're going to bring forward that is proprietary to our butterfly house. That'll be something nobody can get anywhere else, and this is how we're going to be sustainable. Here's a 12-month calendar of how we're going to phase that out. I think you put in there maybe 3,000 school children attend the program. So help show me lines of effort that show this is how we justify this $200,000 revenue number. And the staffing that would be there to support it, you have 50 volunteers now for 5 months. How many volunteers do you anticipate needing for a 12-month operation? So it's just a greater level of detail in the business plan, because I think right now if I were to try to push for a vote for this, I would probably lose. And I have to tell you, without speaking for them, I would understand that. I don't know that I could vote, as I've said, there's no way I could vote to approve funding of $1 million or $100,000 for something that's going to stay open for 5 months. So I think this is maybe the third bite of the apple that you've had. And bad on us maybe for not providing a greater level of specificity of what we're looking for. And I will definitely do my part to get that to the county administrator. The last thing I would say is this. I thought some of the pictures that were reflected in social media, showing pictures of a retention pond there, and that the county administrator wants to put the butterfly house behind the retention pond. let's just try to keep the conversation moving in a positive direction, instead of framing the message in a way that might be, a little
I made it-
negative.
I don't mean
We're
to-
trying to work with everybody here and find a solution.
Yeah, we made it clear that nobody involved in the Panhandle Butterfly House would be putting negative emails or negative things on social media. We don't have control of other residents of Navarre. As y'all know, y'all ran campaigns. And we have definitely put the word out to all of our people and all of the friends of the Panhandle Butterfly House to keep all the negative aspects of anything off of social media and out of media, period. We've tried to do that. This has been a tough process for the PBH. These people they've been very successful at their operation. And to go into a brand new facility is going to take some changes. Again, I have no doubt in my mind that they're capable of doing it. I respect that y'all need to have more documentation. Thank you for watching out for our tax dollars. I am a taxpayer. I think y'all do a great job at doing that. Some people might not feel that way, but I do. I just told the gentleman from Washington County that we are lucky to have the county commissioners that we have in this county. We appreciate y'all listening to us. We just hope that y'all will understand the process that the PBH is going through in this whole ordeal, starting back in 2015.
All right, Kevin, we're not going to go over all that again.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I've got a suggestion in form of motion from Commissioner Williamson.
To move that to the consent agenda.
Okay. I'm gonna now, Kevin, if y'all sit down for just a minute.
Yes, sir.
We have representation from the Wildlife Refuge here. They've been patient. I'm gonna give them as Commissioner Williamson said, a bite of the apple here, so, we want to keep everything on. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill Anderson, 8171 Stillwater Cove in Navarre. I appreciate the opportunity to talk for the Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge in person and directly as the president and chairman of the board of that organization, as opposed to continuing to talk for and about my organization. So hopefully I can clear up some things. Reference Kevin's comments, as he said, when we entered these negotiations, I believe, Mr. Parker, it was your idea originally, Commissioner, and I wasn't, we weren't at that meeting when that issue came up, ECWR. It kind of took me by surprise. Frankly, I thought it's a pretty good one. So that's why we started exploring it with I'm sorry.
No, I just got to give credit where credit's due, and I'm going to steal Dan's factual thing. It was actually, I brought it to the board, but it was based on the recommendation of the TDC and one of their former board members. And so again, this board gave me the privilege to be able to serve on that board this year, and those are the industry folks. So they were actually, the group of citizens were the ones that brought this forward, thinking maybe it would save some money. So, but I just wanted to point that out. They are valuable, that board and the citizens that work on it.
Well, frankly, from our research from that time point, we have found that their citizens' conclusions are probably true, and that there would be significant money savings to the taxpayer in the county if we were jointly located. More importantly, perhaps, we would be more of a tourist and draw to our citizens in the local area if we were combined as opposed to separate. In the business plan that the Butterfly people presented, it lists a number of butterfly houses. In our research of those butterfly houses around the county that they list, not a single one of them is only butterfly houses. They have insectariums, other wildlife present with them. The natural synergy of our missions between ECW and the Panhandle Butterfly House, we think, models all the successful butterfly houses that they list themselves, that it has to be a bit more than butterflies to sustain and draw the attraction levels that we think could be generated by a combined effort. I heard talk about parking. We've got a plan to address parking. We have shared that plan. It's probably premature to due to market forces involved for us to discuss that publicly, but we are prepared to address parking issues that were raised a couple of times. ADA recommendations, look, we have our development order and all our building permits. We are in ADA compliant with those plans. We have to be by law, and we will continue to be if we were to host the Butterfly House on the ECWR property. The Butterfly House appropriately holds themselves out as only working with native species of butterflies, excuse me. When they came to our property on ECWR, they identified 14 species of native butterflies, which led us to, I thought mutually at the time, all agree that this was a pretty doggone idea that the citizens had come up with and you brought to the commissioner's attention. So we started talking with the Butterfly House folks, and we thought those discussions were going pretty positively, frankly. Everybody seemed pretty excited about the idea. We were working through the details, and then we find out that secretly, about 3 weeks ago, they had decided to hold a meeting independently without inviting us to that meeting, and then we got the submittal of this business plan in late October. Look, I understand the emotions involved in this Butterfly House issue, especially for the Butterfly House volunteers. We are also an organization that can't survive without the volunteers. We will celebrate our 25th anniversary here in November of this coming year. So we have been around a long time serving our 5 Gulf Coast communities. We have always said and continue to maintain that we would welcome any and all volunteers of the Panhandle Butterfly House at the ECWR property that we were exploring sharing. That remains true to this day. A smaller footprint, frankly, I don't know. We at ECWR feel like after months of negotiation with the Butterfly House that we're chasing a moving target. They don't seem to be able to identify their requirements. Last we heard from them was a 1,000 square foot demonstration center and an 1,100 square foot vivarium. Now I've heard different numbers today that they gave. 2,000 square foot learning center, 2,200 square foot vivarium. So again, I feel like we're trying to chase a moving target, and I suspect you gentlemen feel that same way to a certain degree. After this amount of time, I find it hard to believe that a comprehensive business plan that would satisfy some of the issues I've heard from the commissioners today couldn't have been developed. When we came to you about relocating the ECWR to Santa Rosa County, we have gone from that initial idea to construction in a year and a half, 2 years. So we can't deal in emotions with business plans. We have to deal in facts, and that's what we have done. So we have tried not to do a bunch of quacking as ECWR and instead produce results. And I think as you see the ground being moved on our property in Navarre, you see those results speak for themselves. And we expect to be open on the 1st of March 2019. So the sense of urgency from ECWR's perspective and why this decision can't be delayed indefinitely is because we have ongoing construction. And if indeed the Butterfly House is to locate on the ECWR property, as a partner, we have utility issues and others that we need to figure out that are in the works now that we would prefer not to spend money twice to redo or undo and have to do again, if that makes sense. The sunlight issue, we have left the entire northeast quadrant of our property open for that very reason that the Butterfly House identified to us, that they needed sunlight for their vivarium. So in our minds, that location of the property has been set aside for their use, and it's got plenty of sunlight and plenty of room. So in conclusion, I would just like to say I appreciate the opportunity for us to be able to speak for ourselves. We do think it's a good idea. We do think we would be stronger if the organizations were co-located and operating jointly as opposed to separately for a whole host of different reasons. One of the primary ones is the savings that you all are looking at for the county and our taxpayers. In addition to you would be supporting 2 thriving and viable nonprofits to support our community as opposed to just one. So thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I'd also like to give Mitch Robbins the opportunity to talk in specifics, since he has led the negotiations to date with the Panhandle Butterfly House. Sir.
One specific I have that I haven't heard answered yet, there's a comment, several comments about the space would be half of what they currently have, and can you give me some clarification on that?
No, sir, I cannot. I don't know where that came from either.
I mean, it came from them.
No, I heard it just now, but as I said, the last requirement we got from them directly was a 1,000 square foot display center and 1,100 square foot vivarium. So that's what we've been operating off of. We heard new numbers this morning at the same time you did.
So the space, I know you also have plans for a education center.
Yes, sir.
So that education center would not be on the space set aside for the butterflies?
It is not.
Okay, all right.
And it is, as a matter of fact, they're
So
laying
basically, that could be added back into the equation.
Yes, sir, it absolutely could, and we've set aside room to do so
Okay.
on the property.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning. Mitch Robbins, 2999 PGA Boulevard. Excuse the voice. Like many in this room, I'm battling something here. As Mr. Anderson said, I spent since May meeting with Mr. Shebler as well as representatives from the Panhandle Butterfly House. Thought we had reached agreement for the most part. We knew we had some details to work out. Unfortunately, those somewhat fell apart last month. And at that point in time is kind of what led to the proposal that was sent in to show costing factors, the fact that we can build the vivarium on location. We already have an education center that is being put onto the facility. It would complete the ECWR build out for the butterfly vivarium. It ensures the viability of two well-respected nonprofits, which is what the intent was, that together we're stronger than separate. And all the research I had done, and I had made mention of this in pretty much every meeting with the PBH folks, every successful butterfly house I have seen and researched, it's not just a butterfly house. It has other things to offer, whether it be birds, lizards, what have you. Every one of them is somewhat different. In fact, even in their own business proposal, they put in there that we're complementary to each other. So it's somewhat shocking. I can understand that the change out of the Navarre Park would be somewhat different for them and have some anxiety as to whether they're actually going to be able to draw the same number of people. To a certain extent, I think the park is part of the reason they draw folks in there. We could actually ensure that a vivarium would be open by springtime. So that way they wouldn't be closed for the next 2 years. On top of the fact, we are prepared to hire at least potentially 1 to 1.5 new positions, which will be, again, tax revenue for the county, for running the vivarium as well as admissions, things of that nature. The increased tourism and residential draw through the combined operations realizes greater tax revenue for everybody. As Mr. Anderson indicated, we have a parking plan. I somewhat feel that the comments about parking was somewhat disingenuous because it has been talked to them about that very plan and what our ideas were. As Mr. Anderson said, we don't really want to publicly state that only because the price is going to go up. It's just the reality of it. So the scope of the ECWR development plan would allow us to build up to a 1,500 square foot vivarium on location without having to resubmit site plans. Everything about it, and you know, we have, our foundations, quite honestly, are going to probably be poured next week. Right now, we're just waiting on plumbers. So to us, the sense of urgency is we're moving forward with the project, and we really can't delay it or slow it down any further than it already had been. And that's why we're asking for the commission to kind of help step in here and help give us direction as to what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And for a considerable hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of savings to the taxpayer.
Commissioner Parker.
Thank you. I hate that I've never had the opportunity to meet Mr. Anderson or anything outside of this meeting today, but I appreciate y'all coming. And I want to bring back around, I appreciate y'all having the conversations. I appreciate Kevin. I appreciate the opportunity that the many men and women that are involved in Panhandle Butterflies have worked on it. I would be remiss not to say I think we've probably surpassed thousands and realistically probably into tens of thousands of dollars that this board has already spent via Mr. Shebler's time, which is not cheap to be an administrator of a large organization, as well as Mr. Murray, Roy Andrews, the money we've spent on Genesis to this. And the only part that bothers me, and this is just being as open and honest as I can with everybody, is I thought about this when Commissioner Cole mentioned the courthouse. I feel that, unfortunately, emotional and political seasons have gotten involved that I hate to see us kick something down the road to what will never be a more pleasant time, but the unfortunate thing is I just feel like we've spent all this time and then to watch it fall apart and say, well, we're just going to address it later. I know Mr. Shebler, when he brought this forward, even though I actually read one post on Facebook that this was my idea to bring forward today, but you know, and he brought this forward with a very specific recommendation and a breakdown. It really has swung, these conversations have swung far further than I think Mr. Shebler really intended it to be based on his own words in this memorandum to the board. And his recommendation was to locate Butterfly House at ECWR to realize significant cost savings and the opportunity to have a Butterfly House open next spring. The reason I state this is it's not going to be easy for any member on this board to vote. Sitting there thinking about who in the audience, you know, this is one of those where you don't have to have an answer, but I'll raise my hand, and I think everybody on this panel could raise their hand, have had to go meet with a lender to get a commercial loan. And that is no small task. And one of the things when you mention is what would the board look for is the time frame that we're dealing with. This hasn't been just going on. I mean, the TDC brought this up. This over 6 months ago. This board voted on it over a year ago. Is to have some of those basic things. Is no matter what organization I support, I can't, in good conscience, and I can't imagine any other man on this board spending a very significant amount of resources, especially after our own Tourist Development Council questioned it, without having that business plan thing. And then the unfortunate part is, and I think this is where you take out emotion and say, my God, if I had nothing to do with it, and we were up here talking about it, was that time enough to prepare the business plan? And some of the things, that is very important, because when you go to a lender, I mean, you can put on fancy clothes and all, but at the end of the day, it's down to what's on the paper. And in those times, I read through it as well this weekend, and, you know, talking about, well, we've got these other places that charge fees, but I don't know what their breakdowns are. I don't know what their revenues are, their expenditures are. And maybe it's because I'm a huge proponent of Dave Ramsey, and he talks about being conservative and not setting people up for failure, but it's like turning a teenager. You know, it's probably not a good example. It's the best one that comes to mind, you know, that's never had to pay for a vehicle maintenance or whatever. It's kind of where we're at, if I understand right. And now we're handing them a Porsche, and we're saying, hey, you pay for everything, because that's kind of what we're doing. We're saying now you got to pay for insurance, and you got to pay for utilities and operations, and that's a lot. I mean, I feel like it could potentially be setting you up for failure unduly, as well as us, and I don't think that's responsible. But at the end of the day, we have already expended thousands of dollars of taxpayer resources to get us this far. If nothing else, from Mr. Shebler and staff's time, he made a recommendation. I'm afraid from what's been conveyed to me prior to the meeting is basically what they're saying is this window of opportunity may escape us. I mean, obviously, the man's saying they're doing construction. And at that point, I only state this to state what may not be quite so obvious is if that happens and then we don't get to an agreement in the park, and now I don't know, without Mr. Shebler commenting, how many thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. This cost us in engineering to put a placeholder because it is an emotionally charged issue, that now you may have 2 windows closed. And so, I don't know, I just bring that up. Again, it seems to me like the obvious statement is they're saying, hey, we're about to move forward. I think they've had numerous meetings from what's been conveyed to me by the county administrator, and I wholeheartedly trust what he said, is that there has been a lot of meetings. I think he said 7 or 8 earlier to his count. And so I don't think this is anything that snuck up on us, and I'm just afraid that you might be losing a window of opportunity. Statement of fact, Commissioner Williamson was a champion for this organization. He was a champion for this project. I mean, he brought this forward. He rallied community support. I know some of the things we heard early on were, private fundraising events, and we heard that as well, not so much from Panhandle Butterfly House, but I think it was the Starfish Foundation and different things. And now, just being honest, when somebody brings a project forward and then the old man says, that brings it forward, says, hey, I've got some concerns and there's some issues. I've also heard from some staff members, that are involved with our tourist development office. And I guess what I hate to say is I hate for us to say, hey, we're just going to do this to please you so that nobody's feelings are hurt, and then you possibly lose the opportunity all the way around. But maybe I say that because that was the recommendation brought forward to us today, but I don't know. Just sharing that with the ladies. I hate for you to think, hey, here's this placeholder, and you may unfortunately miss both windows. So,
I think it's Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Williamson.
I think it's a valid point that Commissioner Parker brings up, and I hope that the folks of the Panhandle Butterfly House realize the decision that they're making. If the board supports this, then your opportunity to partner with another organization that's willing to do so, that will take on the responsibility of the ongoing expenses, that they would be basically the fiduciary responsible party, that opportunity is going to be lost, and that I don't believe that the board is going to support funding for a butterfly house at probably any level if the butterfly house cannot sufficiently provide proof that they would be a sustainable year-long operation. And the business plan that's been presented from my standpoint does not meet that standard. But I went to the Syracuse of Florida State. So I don't have all of the academic credentials that a lot of y'all have, but you've had plenty of time to provide a business plan and to defend what you've got here. And if that had been provided months and months ago, then any corrections that were needed, you would have had time to provide it. I'm trying to provide a way forward that maybe would allow you to thread the needle, and between now and Thursday, really think about the decision that's in front of you. Because I don't know what you can provide in the way of additional financial proof that would have the board feel supportive of $1 million commitment.
So just for clarification, Commissioner Williamson, your motion that is pending would require an answer by Thursday, or do we want to, I was going to add a caveat to it that it'd be, and I know this is kind of a mixed match thing, because I'm sure with all the work you've put into it, you'd like to have a voice in this, but would there be a willingness to let this go to the only meeting week we have in December?
Well, ultimately, the board's going to decide what they're going to decide. I think that between now and Thursday, if the Butterfly House does nothing, they're probably going to lose the opportunity to partner with the Wildlife Refuge. And that means they're going to then have the burden of providing a business plan that will give this board confidence that they deserve an investment of any level to build a new building in the park. And that's, right now, seems like a heavy lift.
All right, Mr. Robbins.
I'm comfortable with moving forward with the recommendation that we have. My main concern is that we have basically 10 projects that are concluded in phase one that solve a bunch of problems that isn't just a playground or a splash pad. It is water quality, it is stormwater drainage improvements, it is any number of improvements in that Phase 1. And we are ready to begin construction in January, February time period of construction. And the Butterfly House has had sufficient time to handle their side of things. So I just don't want to see that delayed.
All right.
I don't think staff or the board wants to see that delayed either.
Since we're at a place we can talk back and forth, including the rest of the board, I assumed, which is a bad thing to do sometimes, when you wanted to leave a placeholder for the Butterfly House at the current location, it would have more time for them, say, another 30 days to get that bookkeeping to us. Mitch, can I ask you a question? Are you comfortable, and if you got to ask Mr. Anderson, with an answer in 30 days? And I'm using 30 days as a roundabout figure to our next meetings in December.
Ideally, we'd prefer it as soon as possible. We would like it primarily just because there's engineering and everything else. So every bit of time that we delay this, it delays the potential opening of that said vivarium to a later date.
Because in my thoughts, there's no need in having a placeholder for 2 days. That's what I'm getting at. If we move with your motion to say, okay, we're gonna keep a place in the park until you can provide that, and on Thursday, we're expected to say yea or nay.
It was open-ended, Mr. Chairman. There was no date put on it. It's just the common sense understanding that once we get past Thursday, probably an opportunity to partner with Emerald Coast Wildlife Refuge, that comes off the table, and they're going to go ahead and move forward with their planning. So once that's off the table, then they have one option, to prove to this board and the new member that's going to be coming onto it that they can be fiscally, that they're fiscally strong enough to be sustainable. And you guys are going to have that comfort level they can provide operations. We know what the size of the square footage footprint should be for the proposed building. And if we, I think the designs were including a proposed building, right? So we're just not going to provide the final construction-ready design plans from an architect for that portion of the project, but everything else could move forward. So, so there's no Thursday timeline, but they know that if they don't have anything by then, their chances of partnering with somebody else get less and less.
Simple. Commissioner Williamson just made a statement that he feels like that, the opportunity's gone after Thursday. Can you give me this board clarification and I want input from the Butterfly House. We've offered you some time to get your financials corrected to where you may prove you can be sustainable. If we give them 30 days to do that, the meeting's in December, does the window close on Thursday, Friday, or if we come back in December and there's a partnership, is there still a partnership there? And I see Mr. Anderson coming up, so. I don't want to put Mitch on a spot when the boss is standing there, so.
No, sir, I get it, and it's a valid question.
Yeah, I mean.
As I said, we are under construction right now.
Okay.
And if we host, in partnership with the Panhandle Butterfly House, them on our site, there is engineering and construction, utility layment, et cetera, that we need to move out on to get this project complete in a timely manner. That's the sense of urgency.
Okay.
We are not trying to provide any artificial pressure on either the commissioners or the Butterfly House. That's just reality.
Yeah.
We have construction underway. Hey, we've been negotiating in good faith this entire multi-month period. We will continue to do so because we think it's a very, very worthwhile idea for all the reasons I already said. We're stronger together than we are separately, and we think we'll be more financially successful together rather than separately, both for ourselves and for the county.
I think that's what I needed to hear to support Commissioner Williamson's motion.
Yes, sir. Clearly, we would like a decision as soon as possible. We were hoping for one today, that you would approve the recommendation of the county staff. There's been a lot of discussion here. We would certainly like to present that if Thursday is doable, we would like you to consider making the decision then. If that goes by the wayside, sir, as soon as possible so that we can make sure we spend our money appropriately.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to take, these three people are lined up, then we're closing this.
Good morning. My name is Romy White, and I'm here this morning as an advocate for transparent and fiscally responsible government. And I would just like to say that it's disturbing to me to find out that possibly tens of thousands of dollars have been invested in a plan that the public wasn't aware was going on. Because if you're familiar with there was a petition started by Nancy Forster, and since, I believe, Friday, more than 1,800 people have signed it to say keep the butterfly house in the park. And I think if you had disclosed to the public what was going on in the meetings, you know, between all of the two groups in the county, I think the public would have spoken up and said, you know, hold up, you know. And so I would just implore you moving forward that when you do, like in May, they just assumed, you know, everything was okay. Give a firm deadline with like a business plan by the second meeting in July. Or, you know, as things move along, or as you're meeting with people, instead of keeping it in secret, I was contacted by people from the Butterfly House who said, we had no idea this was going on. And so instead of having the meetings behind closed doors, you know, be more public with it. Have the county administrator give an update, you know. Maybe he could have given an update in August on what was going on, so it doesn't get to the point where tens of thousands of dollars have gone into an effort, and then all of a sudden, you know, it comes out publicly on an agenda on a Thursday afternoon, blindsides the Panhandle Butterfly House twice now. They were blindsided in May and blindsided again this time. Nancy Forrester's the one who made them aware of it. And so, you know, give this group a fair shot, you know, at defending themselves. That's what I'm asking you to do. Thank you.
Sir, you've been very patient. Thank you.
My name is Bill Walter, 8718 Robinwood Circle, Milton, Florida. I'd like to address a couple issues that you guys have kind of skated over, or a couple people have. One is the parking issue. The Wildlife Refuge mentioned that they had a solution to that. We're not privy to that. I don't know if you guys are or not, but it would be very interesting to find out. I don't want to take my grandkids across 87. I don't want to have to walk 3/10 of a mile, because I can't. And that needs to be addressed before any kind of a vote, and it needs to be published to us to see if we're okay with that. Secondly, moving a butterfly migration route stop is a very costly event, and the county's not going to pay for that. It's going to be the volunteers that have worked diligently for 21 years to establish that as an immigration stop for the monarchs. You haven't addressed the issue of, if you try to move that, is there going to be somebody file a lawsuit? Because it's an endangered species. The monarchs are an endangered species, and their migration routes are even more endangered with development stuff. The proposed site, kind of nestled in a hole in the woods, that's not satisfactory for butterflies. There are some that are going to fly around there. Yeah, I've got a whole lot in my yard. I've got 2 acres surrounded by woods, and I have a ton of butterflies. Not many monarchs, because they don't really like to be surrounded by woods. So it sounds to me like a vote on Thursday would be extremely premature. Expecting a group of volunteers who don't have necessarily the education of writing a business plan, maybe they got it to you late. Somebody should have called and said, hey, we want to work with you guys, but we haven't got this yet.
I think we've already touched on that, so go ahead and move on.
But I'm just saying that a vote Thursday is premature.
Okay, and I think what you're hearing right now is, you know, we're going to belay that. That's the way I'm interpreting it. We're going to put it off till the meeting in December. So.
Okay.
But that's, I've also heard.
Rod just proposed that Thursday.
Yeah. Okay, somebody help me out here.
Yeah. But the motion that we have and that I thought was already moved is to direct staff to work with Genesis to make sure that the construction plans are finalized so that phase 1 of the park can be bid after the first of the year, and that there is a placeholder. place space holder for a butterfly house, that we would keep the contract with Genesis open to do any design work if that's the end result, is a butterfly house and vivarium in the park.
Okay, all right, so you got that, all right?
Okay. But I don't think anybody should be bullied into a decision by that time. Because I don't know how many of you guys have been out to the site, or how many of you guys went to the old site to see the quality construction and that kind of stuff that didn't exist. But I'm also concerned about the $950,000 expenditure that got expanded to 1.2. I'm not exactly sure how you did that, but looking at the square footage and the property and all that, over $300 a square foot to build a commercial building is ludicrous. And I'll tell you why I know that. I graduated.
We don't
from-
need to get in all the details of that right now.
I
We're
have
mainly-
qualifications.
I understand, but we're going to deal with the details of moving this and reserving that property. And you know, I mean, we can go up and down with numbers all day long. I mean, that's, you know, we all want to save taxpayers' dollars, so.
Right.
I just, you know, we can argue anywhere from 800,000 to $1.2 million, but, you know, it's not really relevant today. We got to move forward on this, so.
Okay, and I don't understand why we went back on, I mean, the decision was made, and I understand a business plan was requested, but as far as I know, nobody contacted the Panhandle Butterfly House and said, hey, you know, it's been 3 or 4 months and we haven't seen your business plan yet, because...
They had 7 meetings throughout. They've been meeting the entire time. The business plan wasn't just requested. Dan has been meeting with representatives of the Panhandle Butterfly House throughout. So here again, I think we've got a decision for Thursday. We know what we're going to be doing and moving to Thursday's agenda. At this point, in the interest of time, I think we need to go ahead and move along. Yes, sir.
I just want to state, Mr. Chairman, I support Commissioner Williamson's motion. My statement earlier, I hope it wasn't taken as bullied. I just wanted to state the obvious, that what was being told to us was that by us making this decision, that window sounds like it's going to close. That's not for us to make. So just sometimes stating the obvious, because as Mr. Smith said, we can't predict the future, but we could hear what this man was saying, that opportunity was leaving. But I support Commissioner Williamson's motion, and nothing to add.
Thank you. All right, finish up, sir.
And I would personally like a commitment from the board that you're going to investigate some of those issues and be clear on what they are before you take any kind of a vote on funding or moving or anything else that was proposed.
I believe Commissioner Williamson's motion gives us that option.
Yeah, that does, I believe.
Yes, sir.
But,
All right.
okay, thank you.
All right, very quickly, something new?
My name is Pam Murphy. I am the president of the Panhandle Butterfly House, and I live at 2392 Caribou Circle, Navarre, Florida. I want to thank you all for considering us, giving us this opportunity, and I do appreciate giving us that extra window, because we do have that data. We'd like to show you how we will make our ends meet, because having run nature centers for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Center by myself, as the manager of Blackwater River State Park, Big Lagoon, and several others, that this would really give me an opportunity to show you how we can expand every program, and also how our special events tie into the tourism and affect every area in our county, because I could show you revenue that would come in that would benefit everybody.
Okay.
And my other question is, our request is that you were asking us to work with a new partner to talk it out. I'd like to see their business plan, their financial statements, because I just, by them telling us today that they have access to ours, so I would like to look at their plans to make sure that they incorporate a butterfly house and how that's going to operate. The butterfly houses we compare to are tropical species. That gets into the USDA regulations and is a total different entity than doing a native butterfly house. This is also a new adventure for them because I believe they have never had an open facility where people were allowed to come in. So if they can provide that business plan where I can see that it is beneficial for both our agency, our organizations, I would appreciate that opportunity. And thank each and one of you for the job you've done, and I love living in Santa Rosa County. Thank you.
No more. Nope. This is the last speaker. Thank you.
Wallace Mahout, 5500 Cox Road, Milton, Florida. I just caught something in the discussion that kind of tickled my ear. It was said that the TDC brought the looking at this again up, when I don't think that is correct. It was Jack Sanborn who made the motion, and then Sam presented the question. So, and then the TDC went along with Sam's suggestion. So it was not the TDC that was concerned about this. And as a private citizen, the next thing I'm going to say should not reflect on the Butterfly House, because it's been something I've been thinking about for a long time since this came back for a second look. Mr. Cole, you say you like to save taxpayer dollars, correct?
That's what I've said.
Okay. You saved taxpayer dollars, $100,000 a year for 10 years, which equaled $1 million. That was spent on the Agriplex in East Milton. Was there any discussion with the public
Quite a bit.
about that?
Quite a bit with the horse associations, with the fair association.
So you took taxpayer dollars, that was completely taxpayer dollars, saved all of that money for 10 years for one project. That project came to $1 million.
1.2 million.
Okay.
When it gets to this,
So what is the difference? How much revenue does the Agriplex bring in?
you have to ask the fair association.
Okay, can you provide that for me, and will you send that to me in an email, please?
I'm sure our staff will get that taken.
Okay, who's responsible for the upkeep?
I'll get all those answers. We're not going to sit here and answer them today because I don't have them in front of me. But if you
That's fine, but I'm telling you that this has crossed my mind, that we're sitting here arguing about $1 million, which someone says they can cut that down. They don't have to move to what might be a harmful environment for them. So why can you have an Agriplex for $1 million?
Where are you going with this? What kind of point are you trying to make? 'Cause
I
you're
am trying to make the point that these people have worked for 21 years and kept this place open. Didn't ask for help. Now, maybe they didn't pay the electric bill. But that, you could have told them to split the line, and they would have done it. Why is there so much? What fox is in this hen house? What is going to go there if the butterfly house does not go there? What's in the plans?
Nothing. Nothing is in the plans. Green space is in the plan.
For now, yes. I'm telling you that I don't like it, that $1 million can be saved. That was total taxpayer money. This Navarre Park plan will also rely on other financial help, like Restore.
It wasn't, the key difference was that was all Commissioner Cole's rec fund dollars. This plan provides for many different funding sources.
Correct.
But,
So it's not total taxpayer money.
well, it's all taxpayer money that's coming to Santa Rosa County, absolutely.
That's
but it's-
true.
But it's not
That's
going to one-
true.
It's not going to one project. It's one master plan, Wallace, but there's 10 to 12 different projects included within that, of which one is the Butterfly House. But your concerns are noted, and a respect to the other folks that are behind you. We desperately need to move forward.
Okay, I'm just saying, I don't like it that you can spend $1 million and you're trying to cheat them out of this venture that they have supported for 21 years.
I would just push back and say, I don't believe anyone here is trying to cheat the Panhandle Butterfly House out of anything. The requirements that have been a part of this approved request have been the same since it was approved. And we'll provide a greater level of detail of what we're looking for out of the business plan. They'll be able to provide that, and then the board can decide from there.
All right. Commissioner Williamson, your vote, does it go?
The motion to the, might as well make it the regular agenda in case anybody has any other questions, or?
No, put it on the
Okay, we'll put
consent.
it on the consent agenda without objection.
Hearing none, passes.
Thank you.